get going. It's time for another action-packed day. Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood nerd Mike Meyers with his Monday version of Ask Mike Anything. Sound is good, Elvo, you're the best. Thank you so much. All right, well, as you can see, Jack has now decided he's going to become my co-anchor in the show going forward, so it's hilarious. I'm down here working all the time, and the cat won't sit here, but the moment like 2 o'clock starts to roll around, he's up and ready to go. So now he's sitting down. Anyway, welcome to the Mike Meyers live stream. This is called Ask Mike Anything. The goal of this live stream is to provide those of us who are isolated by the coronavirus an opportunity to continue our studies for CompTIA IT Fundamentals, A+, Net+, and Security Plus mainly, but we can certainly go outside for those who are looking for other certifications as well. This is also technical opportunity for interesting tech stuff, if you want to talk about that. The idea here is it's called Ask Mike Anything, which basically means you ask me a question and then I answer the question. Now, to ask me a question, all you got to do is jump into the live chat here, type in the question. We've got Scott Jernigan, and is Dave Rush on today? So Dave Rush is here, fantastic. And these guys are here to help moderate and keep things in good order. So sometimes I miss a question and these guys will miss it too. So if you ask a question and I miss it, just ask again. It's not that big of a deal. Now the other thing I understand is that for a lot of folks, questions can be complicated. So in that case, go ahead and just send me an email. Here's my contact information right here. My name is Mike Meyers. My email address is michaelm@totalsem.com. And by the way, if you're a gamer, I am Senor Pepe on Steam. And if you want to find out almost anything about me, just do a Google search on the word Desweds, which is one of my many alternative names that I use for nefarious things. Trust me, I don't do anything nefarious with Desweds. I wouldn't tell you to Google search on it. Now all you guys are going to be go Desweds. What else do we have going today? Nom de guerre. Thank you, Scott. I'll go with that one. Hey, I see some names I haven't seen for a while, or some of the regular gang. And just so you know that there is a Discord channel being set up. It is not an official Mike Meyers channel, nor is it an official Total Seminars channel. But I will probably be dropping in on this channel from time to time. Because I'm not running it or anything, I can't have it actually connect with my name in case, somebody starts becoming politically strange or anything like that. But I will be popping in. I'm assuming we have, Scott, do we have the links for the Discord channel? I know things are still working out in some of the details on it, but we had a good time, so that was fun. So let's keep that in mind going forward. So you guys would think that I worked all weekend really, really hard to always have a good show, or at least be trying to finish up the Security Plus book. But no, this weekend I drove out to Austin, Texas, and hung out with all my hippie buddies, and we had a very, very good time. And I didn't do any prep at all. It was great. God, I love Texas sometimes. It's a great state. Great state. Anyway, but you guys have been working really hard. I got a lot of emails over the weekend. And what's interesting about the emails that you guys have been sending me is, for most folks, it's people asking me questions about configuring the Windows Server, which is great. I mean, that's going to be most of what we're doing today, is setting up the Windows Server. But now it got me a little bit nervous, because a lot of the questions I've been getting are questions that show me that we might want to be talking a little bit more about things like DNS, for example. We might want to be talking a little bit more about, probably have to hit DHCP again even, and a few other more, what I would consider more basic things, because it's not going to make much sense to you guys if we whip up PowerShell scripts to create domain users if you don't know what a domain is. So we're going to push PowerShell back a little bit, probably an extra day, and I want to do kind of a quick overview on a few of these concepts. Today we're going to pick up where we left off, setting up, and we will have Active Directory set up and running today. But we're also going to we might put the brakes on things from time to time and talk about stuff in a little bit more detail, and just to make sure we're all comfortable with some of these technologies, because some of the questions I got confused me a little bit. So I hope nobody's offended by that, but I think we'll all be happier if we go through that process. What else happened? Oh, I forgot someone was asking about RAM topologies, and they were talking about daisy chain RAM topologies. And I was like, I don't know anything about this, which, I mean, I study this stuff pretty good, so it's actually fascinating for me when I run into something. And I ended up running into a whole lot of gobbledygook about how your CPU actually communicates to your DIMM slots. And that's what we're talking about with this RAM topology. And there's a lot of really bad information out there. And I'm going to do a whole big, I'm going to be doing a whole thing on this. It's not going to be on any CompTIA exams, but it's a fascinating thing to concern yourself about when you're talking about primarily overclocking. For example, one of the things that surprised me is that most of the most overclocked systems today are ITX motherboards. I was like, why would that be? And there's a real simple reason. It's because they only have one DIMM slot per channel, and it makes overclocking a lot easier. So I'm not ready to talk about this yet today, and plus we're working on Active Directory, but I do want to warn you guys that that's going to be coming up. I like hearing about a technology where nobody seems to have a good definitive answer. And that usually tells me that it needs a good bit of investigation and to put it together. So we'll see. And I'll let you guys know when that is, and that's going to be happening. All right, so let's see. Do we have any questions yet this morning? OB Shaky. Tullwood, of course. Always good to see you. Elbow, good to see you. Alan, good to see you. Vimal. Connor Wellman. Tarun or Taryn. One of these days you're going to tell me how to pronounce your name right. Then you have to tell me about 5 more times, Taryn. It's always funny. We always start off with a smaller crowd and it builds up as the 2 hours goes. Oh, by the way, that is the other thing, guys. Keep in mind is that you have to ask me questions, okay? Now, today's a little bit of an exception because we're going to be picking up where we left off on Wednesday and configuring our Active Directory server. But in general, it's important that you ask questions. So this will run until 4 o'clock my time, which is 2 hours, or until the questions run out. So we'll see. Today, we're probably going to be pretty busy, though. Da-da-dum. All right, I'm looking for questions here. Have I missed it? Are there no questions yet? Dr. Quinn. Tarun, hello, Mike. What are your thoughts on WSL? So, Windows scripting language? Oh, no, you're talking about the Linux thing that comes with Windows. The Windows that's it. Windows subsystem for Linux. I don't know what to do with it is my biggest problem. Programmers are really kind of locked into the Unix world, whether it's Linux or Mac or whatever it is. And so many tools that programmers really, really need have always required Unix or Unix-like operating systems. And that's really put Microsoft kind of behind the 8 ball. So the whole bringing WSL in, which basically allows you to run a bash shell in Windows, is what it boils down to, is supposed to make it a lot easier for programmers. the few programmers I've spoken to about this are disinterested, just because they've got their own setup that they really like right now. But the programmers I've also been talking to are not Windows programmers. They're not like writing Windows applications or anything like that. They're almost all pretty much developing web apps. And so there's no great motivation for them to change. We'll see. It's kind of cool. It's free. But at this point in the game, it doesn't excite me one way or the other. If I need to run a bash shell, I've got a Linux box to do that. Brandon S. Everybody's good. Dun, 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 dun. Vimal has some kind of issue here. Network connection disappeared from control panel. Still showing network adapter and device manager. But when I connect LAN cable, it's not connecting to network. Network connection disappeared from control panel. So, I mean, the only place you're going to... God, what's it called? This is embarrassing. I'm firing up control panel. Oh, network and sharing center. So the only network that should show up in control panel is the network and sharing center control panel applet. So I'm not sure what you mean by that part. I'm glad it's still in device manager. Is this actually a question, or am I intruding where I don't need to? Driver is already installed. Tarun Chadra. Are PowerShell scripts videos scripted? Good God, no. Tarun, I don't re-script or rehearse anything, ever. Really. Do you need them to be scripted? Then you might want to consider one of my fine competitors, because that ain't how Mike Meyers does stuff. I mean, every video I've ever written is pretty much almost completely off the cuff. Like when I do videos, like for my Udemy or Linda LinkedIn videos, I will write down maybe 5 or 6 talking points that I stick on a piece of paper underneath the camera lens, and I just start pontificating, you know. So, yeah, they're not scripted. It's interesting that you would ask me that question, because I'm always like, why are you asking me if they're scripted? What's your motivation? Okay. Oh, I see Scott already laughed at you, Tara. Shane Nielsen came here to say I passed my Net Plus. Oh, excellent. Big round of applause to Shane Nielsen. You passed your Net Plus on Friday, and your material was the leading reason I passed. Thank you, sir. Good luck. Congrats. Go get a job. Let's try popping out the chat so I can actually see what's going on here today. Whoa, Mike, you went all evil villain mode, padding Jack. My name is Mike Meyers. Not a D. For now, I just want to say thank you. My Austrian friend received the book. Oh, you got, okay, cool. All right. Since delivering to Serbia was it, yeah. Yeah, that's always tricky to get those books to some of these. I thought the EU made it all easy. Is Serbia in the EU? I don't want to say something. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Be a typical American. All right. Let me just make sure we got anything going here. Vu D, I want to thank you until passed my Security Plus last week. All right. Congratulations, Vu. Well done, sir. Scott. Yeah, thank Scott for typing in that Windows subsystem for Linux. I had to think about that one for a minute. I installed it when it came out last year, I guess, and I was like, cool. And then I haven't used it since. Security Plus was your first certification? Oof. Bad bitch, there's a name. Is the CompTIA A+ test hard for people who have been tech savvy since they were young. I feel like I know most of the basics of your book. Okay, well, that's good. I mean, that's definitely going to make things a lot faster for you. No, if you're an experienced tech, I'm just going to call you BB if you don't mind. If you're an experienced tech BB, really, honestly, the only thing I would do is go buy some practice questions, just so you can get an idea of how the exam is going to play out. And, you know, the 10% of the topics that you don't know about, a lot of times you can just do your own R&D and figure them out. So yeah, no, I don't think the test is hard at all for experienced technicians. The one thing you do have to watch out for is that the number one reason people fail CompTIA exams is test anxiety, because you just freak out. The number two reason that people fail the CompTIA A+ in particular is because you know too much. And you'll sit there and you'll look at a question and you'll go, hey, well, you know, 2 + 2 could equal 5 for extremely large values of 2 or something like that. If it's on a Tuesday and it's green, you make the questions too hard in your own head. So remember that these exams are written for basically 19-year-olds. So they're not looking for really sophisticated answers. I don't think any of the CompTIA exams are particularly deep. They're all quite wide in terms of what you have to know for them, but no, they're not hard. I don't think you'll have much trouble at all. So here, don't buy my book, because you're probably not going to need it. Well, wait a minute. I feel like I know most of the basics of your book. So you already bought my book, BB? Ah, okay, thank you. Web Dev Bootcamp. If my internal HDD is corrupted, can I install an OS on an SD card and boot off of it? Sure, I mean, yeah, yes, sure you can. The only trick would be is if you have to make sure that the motherboard would recognize the SD as something it could boot from. So that probably means that you're not going to be able to just buy like an USB SD and boot from it. Yeah, I don't think you would be able to. It would have to be something internal that it would know that the SD drive, in essence, port, is something to look for bootable media. And then you could do it. Well, I mean, that also brings up another question. Why do you want to boot off of an SD? Just boot up off of a thumb drive. If you're trying to fix something, so you're trying to fix like a corrupted disk drive, then you just boot off of a thumb drive. You know, make a Windows installation thumb drive, and boot off that, and run check disk or whatever you want from there. That'd probably be the way I would do it. But if you're looking for like a permanent fix, I probably wouldn't want to use an SD. Get yourself a nice new motherboard with a NVMe M.2 on there, man. Now we're talking. Looking for questions. Patricia Grace just jumped in. Oh, this script, you're trying to make a little humor here, huh? Yeah. I'm in a very serious mood today, man. Mike's head is looking nice and fuzzy today. Thank you, Tolowit. NM, got my first job interview in IT today. I'm feeling confident. All right. Did you already have your interview or what? So cool. Well, good luck. BB already bought my book. Thanks, BB. Noine, is that the real Michael Myers? It is, baby. In the flesh. Hey, Mike, question for you. There is a Microsoft 365 cert available. Yep, MD100, MD101. Who's the cert geared towards? How much weight does a cert like that have? Not a lot. I know it's, I think Microsoft's literally giving those away. You can take them for free. Yeah, that's what it is. This is the MD101 is just their desktop cert. You know, how to upgrade Windows and install device drivers and, you know, running anti-malware. Yeah. It would not be, in my opinion, a serious consideration for somebody who wants to get in IT. To me, it's more of a user thing, which doesn't make it bad. If you think about it, CompTIA's IT fundamentals exam is really a user, in my opinion. But it's a good start. Kevin Hawk, what is your opinion of the WCNA cert? Don't even know what it is. That says something. Oh, the Wireshark cert. I've actually never seen it. Wireshark Certified Network Analyst. I don't think that would have a lot of strength unless you had a job that was directly doing a lot of Wireshark. But it could be cool in terms of learning stuff. Man, now I'm interested. You got me interested in this WCNA certification. You don't see Wireshark certification on too many job listings. I'm going to go with that. Okay. Looks like you guys got some little conversations going there. VuD, how do you secure data in use? I mean, it's data that's actually working for a living. God, Vu, you asked me this question last week, didn't you? I'm going to blame Scott Jernigan. I literally, at this point in the game, would be grabbing a copy of one of my books and seeing what I wrote about it. Data that's actually being used. Geez. Put up a privacy screen on your monitor. The Juice Squad. Mike, I'm a big fan. I just want to ask, what's your body count? My body count? 7? I did. My body count. I have killed many men. Noine, how do you enforce relational integrity in database design? I do not know how to do these things. Is that a question that I should know the answer to? It sounds more like a database kind of a thing. Sorry, Noine, I don't have an answer for you on that one. Noine, if I'm supposed to know it, yell at me. Oh, Juice Squad is making jokes. Which game? Body count. Tarun, does Windows Ready Boost really work? I'm pretty sure they took it out. I don't think Windows Ready Boost still exists. I think they took it out. Let me check. It's been a while since I've looked that up. Scott, is Windows Ready Boost still around? Or didn't they yank it? I can see that there's some articles on it from 2018 that are still talking about it. I don't see anything recent. Hang on. Let me look up ReadyBoost. In one of the more recent patches, a lot of really common stuff got deprecated. I mean, a lot of stuff. Yep, I'm going to Wikipedia. Hang on. That still seems to be working. I guess ReadyBoost is still around. ReadyBoost, you just basically take a thumb drive and you kind of boot off of it. I think if you have an SSD, ReadyBoost would not make any sense at all. To me, ReadyBoost needs rotational media to make any sense. That's interesting. So, yeah, it was maybe 2 patches ago on Windows. Don't ask me what version of patch because I don't remember. A lot of really stuff that I thought was really important. Home groups, for example, are deprecated. They're gone. I mean, they'll still support them for a while, but no more home groups. You can't, if you upgrade your Windows and if you already have a home group, it'll support it, but you won't be able to create a new home group anymore. There were a bunch. That was very interesting. See how much was taken out. Fortnite. Yeah, I don't like playing any games with circles that get smaller. All right. Fantasy JL, Mario. Okay, Juice Squad, you're just being a silly hamster. Fantasy JL this is from 222. God, it's already been almost 30 minutes. Does getting my A+ cert at least guarantee me to get my feet wet in the IT field? Absolutely not. No way. The only thing certifications do for you, Fantasy, is that it gets your foot in the door. It puts your resume at the top of a stack, but God, it's sorry for you longtime listeners, but I got to get on my soapbox one more time. Fantasy, what gets people jobs in IT is going to look for jobs, okay? There's zillions of entry-level jobs out there. We have some videos that talk about this. I run into way too many people who are like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of certifications and then I'll just go get a job. Well, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of things that go on. I would rather have a person, assuming that they're at least technically interested, I would rather have a person that's motivated and excited and full of energy and shows up on time than somebody who has 37 certifications, especially at this more entry-level world that I tend to play in. The goal of these certifications is to allow employers and future employees a way to be able to measure up a certain amount of skills necessary to do whatever job that might be. So don't ever look at certifications. Oh, I'll get a certification, I'll get a job. Doesn't work that way. Certifications just get you into the interview, and then it's up to you. Nay, what is the difference between OLAP and OLTP? What the heck? I gotta look that up. Oh, dude. Nay, dude, or dudette, I'm not sure that I'm the guy you want to be talking to. OLAP is online analytical processing and online transaction processing. It's data analysis stuff. So I neither know what it is, nor do I actually deal with it. So I'm afraid that I may not be the guy you're looking for these types of questions. Sorry, man. So about this time is where, oh, cool, all right. Fantasy jail, by getting your feet wet, an entry-level job. It's not going to guarantee you one, but it's going to help. And fantasy, there are plenty of entry-level jobs that don't require any certification at all. There's entry-level jobs that will pay for your certifications. There's entry-level jobs out there that'll go, well, we want you to be A+, but either be A+, or you have to be A+ certified within 6 or 9 months after getting a job here. So there's a lot of variance in there. The most important thing to do is go get a job. The most important thing you got to do is go get a job. These certifications are things you study on the nights and weekends because you've got a day job, and then you progress and build from there. Mario's here. Frank. Hello, Frank. There is no God. My name's Frank. Question. With the advent of VLANs, is there still a reason to subnet? Did I not get this question before? With the advent of VLANs, is there still a reason to subnet? Yes. Isn't that what the VLAN's supposed to do? Nope. Different animals. So a VLAN works, a VLAN will split up one broadcast domain into multiple broadcast domains. So it's kind of a layer 2 sort of an animal. VLANs work within local area networks. Now, subnetting, the main people who subnet more than anybody else are internet service providers. Because let's just say I'm Comcast, and I've got a lot of customers out there who need fixed IP addresses. Most of us at home, when we connect to the internet, we use a DHCP address that's brought down to us from a DHCP server, and we have it's a legitimate public address, but it's temporary, right? So for a lot of people, you know, if I'm a big business, when you start talking about enterprise level stuff, a lot of times I need my own set of public IP addresses. And so an ISP is going to grab a block of, I'm going to make up numbers here, okay? So he's got a block 1.2.3 WAC24. So he's got the entire network ID of 1.2.3, okay? So he's got 1.2.3.1 all the way to 1.2.3.254. Most enterprises, they don't want to give all of their individual computers public IP addresses, but they might have lots of routers, and they might have public servers and things like that where they need those addresses. So they only need 4 or 5 addresses. So what are you going to do? You're going to give away the entire 1.2.3 to one customer? No, not at all. You take that 1.2.3 and you subnet it down to, I don't know, depends on how subnetting works a lot of different ways. I could make something up real quick. I could break it up into 30 networks, and each one of those networks would have 2 IP addresses. How's that for a starter? And you'd be surprised, like even at Total Seminars, we have 2 static IP addresses because that's what we need. We need one IP address is the WAN side of our router, and that's a static address that never changes. And then we have another one that we play with. So hopefully that gives you an idea. So when we were talking about subnetting, that is a very different thing from VLANs. They do not have a common notion about them. But those are great questions, Frank. That's how we learn, and that's what this is all about, is talking about those types of questions. We have subnetting videos that I invite you to watch. Alice Potsy. Hey, Alice. If you partially complete a performance-based question, do you get any points, or is it all or nothing? I don't know. Right now, I believe that the noise is that you get all or nothing, Alice, but nobody knows for sure, and that's the right answer. Oh, sorry, Scott, I'm not doing timestamps. Okay. We're having a thunderstorm here. So if I suddenly go out, hang around, I'll try to get right back on. Scott, you got a thunderstorm up there in your part of the world? 2:30, 2:33 p.m. Do I have dirty glasses? 2:33 p.m. Ben Nana, question. A friend's Docker process is showing 70% CPU usage, but 0 RAM. What's going on there? I don't know. That's a fascinating, what? 70% ZP, and it's Docker? Ben, I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that. Here, I'm going to say the 3 sexiest words that I can say to another tech. I don't know. But I would definitely, I would just look it up. I mean, I could Google it for you, but there's nothing obvious to me right there. Ooh, Tarun, data in use can be protected by DEP. It sure can. Yes, good one. Thank you. (2:25 p.m.) Patricia Grace, I should know everything. Yeah, I should. I mean, I hate to say this, but I have forgotten more about computing. All right, I'll tell you what, guys. We're running a little late here, so I want to get started on Active Directory. So I'm assuming that you guys, based on the emails, a lot of you guys have got it up and running, so congratulations to y'all. But for those of you who haven't, I want to literally pick up where we left off. And if you remember, all we had done so far is we had set up and we had done we've promoted the Windows Server to a domain controller. When you install Windows Server, it is not automatically a domain controller. The domain controller is what controls the domain. When you set up a domain controller, you get some good things. One of the most important things you get is single sign-on. When you have a Windows domain, and by the way, that domain does tie in closely to a DNS domain. We're going to be setting up a domain, but I'm not going to be actually on the internet with it. It's just going to be a DNS server that's going to be just serving my machines there. And I'm going to give it a domain name, something like test.local or .local. That makes sure that even if I were to accidentally plug myself up into the internet, my DNS server isn't going to start broadcasting out, I'm Microsoft.com or something like that. Get the idea? So when the first thing we do once we have Windows Server installed is we go through this process of promoting the system to a domain controller. And we had got that started last week, and that took a while. The DC Promo took a while. DC Promo is the old name for the command line to take a Windows Server and upgrade it to a domain controller. So it's an old man term. I'm going to DC Promo that system. So what I want to do is, when I say pick up where I left off, I mean we're going to pick up where we left off. But I want to make one small change, okay? So for those of you who are up and running, please be up and running on VirtualBox right now. All we need for starters, though, is the VirtualBox Manager. I'm going to change the scenario very slightly from what we had last week. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the DHCP server in our virtual NATed network. I'm going to turn it off. And we're going to turn on the DHCP server on the domain controller. So our domain controller is actually going to be running, it's going to be running the Active Directory, it's going to be running DNS, and it's going to be running DHCP. The reason I'm doing that is because my upstream DHCP server, the one that's built into VirtualBox, is kind of a stupid DHCP server, and so we're going to have to go ahead and turn that off. So the first thing I want us to do right now, don't even if your virtual machines are fired up, great. But what I want to do right now is I want you to start up VirtualBox, and let's go into the VirtualBox Manager right now. All right, so all I want to do in here, it's a little bit bigger. Actually, why don't we make this a lot bit bigger? Okay. So what I want us to do is come right up here, go to File, and go to Preferences, because that's where you go to change your networks, right? I know, I always laugh because there's Network Operations Manager, there's Host settings, virtual, all this stuff. You just go to Preferences, go down to Network, and the one I'm going to use is the one we made. It is not showing up again. That is craziness. Hold on. Sorry, kids. There we go. So here under Preferences, under Network, I want to go to this NAT 10.0.2 because that's what I'm going to set my internal network ID up as. And you see where it says supports DHCP? I'm going to turn that off. You got it? The reason we're doing that is because on this domain controller, we're going to set up a DHCP server. So I don't want two DHCP servers. So we're shutting that one off. And now we are going to go ahead, and part of one of the things we're going to be doing today is configure the DHCP server. The main reason I'm doing this more than anything else is A, I got some pretty strange questions over the weekend about what people think DHCP does. And B, the DHCP server that comes with Windows plays very nicely with the DNS server that comes with Windows. Think about this. I mean, every time a computer boots up and gets an IP address, the DHCP server has to talk to the DNS server and go, you know, Mike's computer.test.local is now IP address X. Get the idea? So it's just going to make our lives a little bit prettier to do that. So I'm assuming you have turned off DHCP support on your box. Now, guys, I am not going to be watching the questions very closely here. So it's going to be kind of up to you to, maybe Scott Jernigan can monitor, but I'm not going to be able to see them. So be warned. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's just jump into our server. Hello, server. Where are you at? I don't think that's my server. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what I've done here is I've got this kind of zoomed in because I want you to be able to read some of these screens that we're going through. One of the first things I've done is I've gone into my network connections, and this is just through Control Panel. And I want to go in here, and I just want to make really sure that my settings are where I want them to be. So let's take a look at this together. So you'll notice it's static. Guys, servers are static. They don't use DHCP. So right now I've got an IP address of 10.0.2.15, and my default gateway is 10.0.2.1, and my preferred DNS server is myself. Do you see that? Whenever you're setting up a Windows server, you really want to get these settings right before you start setting up a DNS server or a DHCP server. Windows really tries hard to make your life easy to configure a Windows server, and if you don't have this stuff set up ahead of time, it's going to try to do stuff. Like, for example, in your DNS, it's going to go, my IP address is whatever the DHCP was, which you don't want, right? You want your static address. So it's really, really important we get those set up. All right, so mine are set up. So let's go ahead and jump in, and let's go over to the Server Manager. Let's go over to the Server Manager. Let's go over to the Server Manager. Don't leave me, Jack. All the plants will die. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Hang on, kids. I'm just trying to get Server Manager going here. Okay, here we go. Let's do it. All right, so one of the things you guys are going to notice here, Mark Wheeler, did we have a password? No, you set up your own passwords. I'm curious what that means, Scott Wheeler, Mark Wheeler, sorry. When you, Mark, I'm assuming you installed Windows Server, right? Okay, and during the installation process, you have to create administrator account, you got to give it a password. So if you installed Windows Server, you gave it a password at some point. I have a password on mine. I hope that we have different passwords, because I don't tell people what passwords to use, because you have your own passwords. All right, let's get back on this. All right, so the first thing is when you look at Server Manager after promoting a system, you're going to get lots of errors and issues and things. Just ignore that stuff for starters, okay? Now, I also noticed I made a mistake. If you look really closely, you'll see that I have DHCP installed. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, okay? We're going to go ahead. What I want to do at this point in the game is let's get our DNS up and running, and then we're going to be in good shape. So let's take care of that one first. Okay, so what we're going to do here is go up here. So we go up here to manage, and we're going to add roles and features. I'm trying to get this so you guys can read it. It's a little tricky. All right. So little warnings about stuff. So we're going to installation type, role-based or feature-based. Yeah, we always do this because we're doing it basically locally. And I'm just clicking next at the bottom. You can't see next. So select a server. So here's the server. This is my server. So I actually did one little screw up here. If you see, it gave me a weird server name. So it's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of a pain in the rear end to remember all that. So what we're going to do here, let me make this smaller. And before we do anything else, I'm going to just change the name of the server to something a little bit more palatable instead of this big, see that win dash, all that goobity-gock? So I'm going to close this out for a minute. Minimize, whoops, don't minimize the virtual machine, Mike. People are trying to watch. There we go. This shouldn't even be open yet. Close this. All right, so we're back here, and all I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to change the computer name. There's about 30 different ways to do this, but the way I like to do it is I go into my File Explorer, I go to this PC, right-click, and select Properties. And you see right here, computer name, goobity-gock. So we're going to just click on Change. And let's give it a name that makes some kind of sense here, okay? How about if I just call it Server? I can give it a really simple name like Server because I'm going to have one virtual machine that's a server and one virtual machine that's a client. That's my whole network. In an enterprise environment, I'd be using much more complicated naming conventions. So I'm just going to call it Server, and you'll see right now it says member of a work group. It's still a member of a work group, okay? We're going to go ahead and do one more little process, and we're going to create the domain itself. That's almost certainly going to require a reboot here. Yep. So let that guy reboot. And we'll talk for a little minute. I'll just make sure the reboot's rebooting. Restart now. There it goes. Okay, so the reboot's going ahead and kicked in. So what I want to do is make sure we got the domain up and running, because I got it rebooted fast. All right. So here's the thing. In order to log into a Windows Server box, you have to hit Control-Alt-Delete. Please do not hit Control-Alt-Delete, folks, okay? Let me show you what you got to do here. Remember, we're in a virtual machine, and if you hit Control-Alt-Delete, it's going to be rebooting your real computer. So let's just take a little peek here, and up at the top, you just select, that's so frustrating. So up here, this menu, this is from the virtual machine. This is not part of Windows. So I just click on Input, Keyboard, and I say Insert Control-Alt-Delete. You see that? Now you see on the right it says host DEL. What they're talking about there is that VirtualBox has a key called a host key, and by default, it's the right control key. So I can use that menu to send a Control-Alt-Delete, or I can just hit Control and Delete, because that's the default host key for my VirtualBox setup, and probably yours too. All right, here we go. So now I can type in, I go and type in my password. So I'm going to just double check something really quick because it's bugging me. There you go. See, now it says server, nice and pretty. So something happened here, guys. I don't know if you noticed this. It didn't install the domain. So we're going to try this again. I'm going to leave the DHCP server on. So I need that to be checked. That should have been installed. I'm going to just select all the defaults, blah, blah, blah. Restart automatically if needed. Hit install. So this is the part you should have done. Yeah, they're all really rehearsed, aren't they? I knew something was wrong when I changed the server name to just server, and I saw it was still a member of a work group. The moment you promote a Windows server to a domain controller, I mean, you got to give it the domain a name, and it will automatically join the domain that is the domain controller of. So I knew we had a little bit of an issue here. So this is probably take a moment. Why don't we answer some questions while we're letting that install, Bob? Scott, I'm actually going to count on you. Do we have any, does anybody have any questions, right? I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. I think everybody's looking okay. I always get nervous when people don't ask questions. It's like, am I doing that good of a job or am I doing that bad of a job? Dun, dun, dun. Looking for questions. Xerxix, you got your retake in 1 hour and 14 minutes. This is a good place to be, Xerxix. You don't want to be studying that last hour. You want to just, keep your mind. Ooh, that's right. I'm sorry, guys. Just as a reminder, just because you're nice enough to log in, we are offering this week 50% off all of our A+, Net+, and A+, and Net+, the Total Tester, which is the practice questions, and the SIMs, which are the performance-based questions. We sell those as separate bundles, and the Security Plus Total Tester. And to do that, just go to www.total7.com, go over to our merchant area, buy all your practice questions you want, and then enter the code 101920, today's date, at checkout. And you get 50% off. My stuff's already about the cheapest out there, at least of the good stuff, and that's even 50% off of that, so not bad. All right, I think we're... Sorry. All right, I'm just doing some quick checks on my machine. A lot of times when you're adding roles, like promoting the machine to a domain controller, adding DNS, adding DHCP, adding remote logging, all these different, there's lots of roles, zillions of them. Most of the time they'll go, look, we're just going to go ahead and do this in the background and keep going. The problem is sometimes I can't tell if it's running or if it's in or not. Okay, so it's up and installed. Let's get on it. Here we go. All right, so I've gone ahead and installed Active Directory. And what I've done here is I'm back in Server Manager. Here, just so you guys know where I'm at. This is the front screen for Server Manager. And what I'm doing here is you can click on all kinds of stuff here. Here's the Active Directory directory services. And here's my machine. And what I want to do, it's giving me a warning. It says I need to configure it. No big surprise there. Post-deployment configuration. All right, let's do this. So you can, most of the time right here in these task details, one more time, did you guys see where I got that? I just came up here. And Windows is telling you what I need to do. So right here it says, promote this server to a domain controller. Here we go. You guys ready? So add a domain controller to an existing domain. We don't have an existing domain yet. Add a new domain to an existing forest, or add a new forest. Let's talk about that. So let's say I'm at some big company called Total Seminars, and I have a DNS name called totalsem.com, okay? Now, totalsem.com, certainly www.totalsem.com is my web servers, but I can also have all my machines in my network be a part of that as well. That doesn't mean they're publicly accessible. It means they just share the same domain server, DNS server. So DNS allows you to make what are called forests. A forest can be many domains. Like for example, I can have dallas.totalsem.com, houston.totalsem.com, austin.totalsem.com. Each one of those is serving by its own domain controller, but they're all members of the same forest, okay? But each one of those are a separate domain. So we have nothing at this point, so what we're going to have to do is create a new forest. So let's add a new forest. And now we got to give it a name. Now, if this was a legitimate company, I would do something like a .com or .edu, but just for fun, I'm going to call it labdomain.local. I'm going to write that down because I tend to forget these things. So hold on a minute while I write down labdomain.local. Wait a minute, Mike. Why don't you make it labdomain.com or something like that? Well, the answer is pretty simple. All of these computers, they'll still be able to get on the internet, but just like anything else. But they're not going to be public machines on the internet. I don't want to register a domain or any of that stuff just to set up a little domain for my office. So I use the domain .local as a definer. It says, look, it's just for us. Get the idea? In fact, as we start logging in and stuff, you'll see a lot of times you don't have to type in the .local. You just type in lab domain, Mike at lab domain and stuff like that. So that .local nomenclature is only really used for internal Active Directory networks, which most of them are. All right, you can't see it, but I'm just hitting next. And this is usually pretty quick. Okay, so there's a lot of different functions that, oops, I'm trying to click on the software. Okay. There's a lot of different versions of Windows Server that have come out over the years. And they get different feature sets and such. And you find yourself in a situation where you're upgrading a few machines to, this is Server 2019, but I have some older machines and I want to make sure that they're backwardly compatible. I might pick an earlier version. So for this, I'm going to leave it as Server 2016 because I don't have any backward compatibility issues. All right, so we're also going to set up, it's going to have DNS, and it's going to have the global catalog. in Windows, you have, in a Windows domain, this domain controller is a pretty important machine. Literally all of our domain accounts are going to be stored on it, all this stuff. And we don't want this to ever go down, like ever, okay? And if it does, what you usually do, Microsoft Best Practices says, go set up another Windows server. Yeah, go buy all the software again and everything. That's what they say. And they're right. You want a backup domain controller. Now, back in the old days, you would have a primary domain controller and a backup domain controller, or 2 or 3 backup domain controllers. Or you'd set up a domain controller in Houston and then have another backup domain controller in Dallas that people could at least log into. The bottom line is these domain controllers have to talk to each other constantly. And so you run into some situations where one of the domain controllers has to be the first among equals, in essence. And that's the global catalog. So if we were setting up another domain controller, we would not want another global catalog machine. There's only one. So right now it's pre-checked because they're smart and they know because we said we're setting up a forest. So it's turned on. So now I need to have a password. Now this is the big password for the virtual machine, okay? So this is, I'm sorry, I'm lying to you. This is the recovery. If there's ever a problem with directory services, this is a recovery password. So I'm just going to type in a password here. Use your own password here, folks. And please don't forget these. You forget critical passwords in a Windows server, you've lost everything. There is no recovery. So you don't lose passwords. You know, people have a problem a lot of times because when you're working at home and you get kind of sloppy about your local administrator for your individual Windows systems and stuff, that's no big deal. Not having the right password for a Windows server, well, we'll start by firing you. And so it's important. You don't forget passwords, okay? Users forget passwords. Us techs, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Ever. Okay. So I'm just going to hit next. No. Let's go take a look here. All right, so it's asking me now. It says, I can't find a DNS server, so what do you want me to do here? Do you want me to delegate it? So it says, you want me to go to some other DNS server? And what we're going to do is we're not going to do that. We're going to just leave that blank, and we'll get the DNS server set up here in a minute, and then it'll be happy. And here it's asking for a NetBIOS name. This is the old Windows NetBIOS nomenclature. But we'll leave it there. It just says lab domain. We're okay. And we're going to go ahead and get that domain controller set up. There we go. This is default folders for stuff. And now the actual promotion to a domain controller takes place. While this is happening, this is probably a good time for you to take some time. Write down the name of your new domain. Later, you'll get it memorized because you'll use it all the time, but at this point, writing down the name, your new domain that you've created. See, I already forgot mine. labdomain.local, and write down your passwords. Yeah, I know. I say write down your passwords. All right, then we get a bunch of little errors. I don't care about the errors. I'm just going to go ahead and hit install. It's mainly complaining that it doesn't have a DNS server yet. So I'm just going to let it go. Because we're going to set up a DNS server. It's okay. And I'm getting all these errors and stuff. Installing a Windows server is an error-prone thing. You don't worry about it. Let's see how we're doing on questions. Jack couldn't handle Active Directory. It's trying to reboot. I want it to reboot. All right, I'm still looking at questions. Yeah, I know, Taran. I don't know why. Yeah, honestly, on a test bench like this, use as simple as a password as you can. Active Directory requires a complex password, minimum of 8 characters, alphanumerics, and one special character at least. Looking for questions while my computer is rebooting. Patricia, you forgot your Patricia forgot her password. Oh. Mark Wheeler, I can't reset the password. Okay, Mark, honest to Pete, it's so fast just to reinstall Windows, I would delete the virtual machine and just do it again. Keep in mind, this is all recorded, Mark, so you can always refer back to this anytime you want. Yasin Asadi. Hi, dear Mike. I love you and want to thank you for your great courses. Right back at you. Ben Nana, my server disconnected from the internet. The virtual server that we're doing right here, it should. You don't have, it's okay. Let it disconnect. We're going to get all this up and running here shortly, man. The only, honestly, we don't even need to be on the internet at all for this demonstration, at all. But if you want to be on the internet, just as we finish setting stuff up, it'll all come right back on. Yeah, man, I got to tell you, the first few times you install Windows Server and you start adding these roles and everything, you just see all these errors and you're like, oh my gosh, I've screwed everything up. Nah, you haven't. You're just setting it up. You guys are all over the place question-wise. Web Dev Bootcamp at 303. I downloaded Ubuntu Server and trying to verify the integrity by comparing hashes, but I don't know what to compare it to, and Ubuntu site didn't provide me anything, or I didn't look far enough. Okay, Web Dev Bootcamp. They do provide it. You're just going to have to find the right place to do that. The default Ubuntu installation is just basically an executable, or it would be an ISO, but that just downloads. You're going to have to go, it's like additional places, alternative installation methods or something like that, and it will give you the SHA hash for that. Then when you download it, you have to run a hash yourself. So you need some kind of hashing software. There's gazillions of different hashing softwares out there. They all work great. But you need to install your own hashing tool on your system. I forget which one. I think I use something called Hashman. It's kind of nice because I can right-click on an ISO and it'll say, give me the hash. MD5, SHA-1, SHA-2, whatever you want. You just click on it and it gives you this big long hash. And I don't compare the hashes number for number or letter for letter, whatever it might be. I'm going to just look at a couple, and if those are right. When a hash is off, it's way off. A hash is not like off by one number or one character. It's off by a lot. There you go. Web Dev Scott Journey gave you the link. They're at 308. Outstanding. Thanks, Scott. Hash tab. That's it. Hash tab. Yes, Web Dev Bootcamp. Hash tab is an excellent little hashing tool that you just install on your Windows system, and then you can just like right-click on something and get a hash for it. I don't have it on this system right here. We are still booting. Come on, computer. $309 AOSX 182. Hi, Mike. Just passed Core 1 on Saturday. Good man. Now go past Core 2. Round of applause. Well done, sir. This is always the dangerous part about doing any kind of live stream. Yes, Web Dev Bootcamp. I got your emails, my brother. I did. Where'd they go? I have many phones. Chicka chicka ching. Web Dev Bootcamp, send me another email, but let me know who you are. I've got so many emails. If you're in here, it doesn't say Web Dev Bootcamp. Sorry, guys, I'm just slightly overwhelmed. I got even more email that, for some reason, just updated. Okay. All right, so it's restarted. Let's go ahead and take a look. So let's log in. Ooh, look at that. Look how pretty that is. All right, so it's ready for me to log in. Here we go. Yay. Let's take a look at the server manager. So I'm just checking a couple things. Everything's looking pretty good. Okay, so we have a domain controller. So what I want to do now is let's go over to Tools. And let's go take a look at DNS real quick. All right. So this is the DNS manager. So I've got a question for you guys real quick. I need you to type something in and answer this question. If you have ever set up a DNS server in your entire life, ever, I want you to type the word yes into the chat. If you've never set up DNS server of any type before, I want you to type in no. So go ahead and type it in right now. Patricia, you can use a 192.168 if you want. It's not going to hurt anything. This is what I was afraid of. Okay, so we got a lot of folks here who've never set up a DNS server. Honestly, setting up a Windows DNS server is probably one of the nicest things about Windows. I find setting up DNS for a Windows system to be a lot easier than the alternative for most people is going to be the Linux tool. I can't believe I've gone blank. Scott Jernigan, quickly, the default DNS server that comes with all the Linux boxes is called All right, well, we'll get back there. All right. Anyway, so let's go ahead and set up DNS. You guys ready? It's actually pretty straightforward. Okay, so what we do is pick our server here. Here's our server called server. So isn't it better to be able to see the word server as opposed to a bunch of gobbledygook in here? All right. All right, when you're setting up DNS, what you have are a number of very, very important things. First of all, so you have what's called the forward lookup zone. Now, because we have set up a domain controller, we automatically get a forward lookup zone for, shoot, let me go back one. I went to, the screen's just a little bit too small for you guys to see what I want to. So you see it says labdomain.local. Active Directory leans heavily on DNS. If you set up a domain controller, Windows will automatically create a DNS server for that domain, okay? So that makes it actually kind of convenient. So we've got a couple of things we've got to make sure we understand. Number one, we have what's called a forward lookup zone. A forward lookup zone is nothing more than the actual fully qualified domain names along with the associated host name, okay? And that's where we actually do the resolution. When somebody, if this were a public DNS server, for example, this would be the authoritative server for labdomain.local. Get the idea? So that's what the forward lookup zones are. There's something else called a reverse lookup zone. A reverse lookup zone actually will take an IP address and come up with a fully qualified domain name. They're not super critical, but Windows fully supports them, and they're all built in and ready to go. So there's also a couple other things I want to show you, but let's get through these first. All right, back to it. Okay, and guys, all we did is set up a domain controller and gave it a domain name, and look what it's done for us. So here, I'm going to go back to the top so you guys know where I'm at here. So I click on server, and what I want you to do right now is look at forward lookup zones, okay? And keep in mind, you can have lots of domains on one DNS server. In this particular case, we only have one, but we could have lots of them if we wanted. So let's go ahead and double click on your DNS server. Let's click on the domain. And what I want you to look at is, oh, actually I did click on it, sorry. Forward lookup zones and then the lab domain. There we go. So what I want you to look at, does this show up on the screen? Yeah, it does. It shows up good. All right. So first of all, every forward lookup zone is going to have a start of authority. And this one is called server.labdomain.local. Here, let me expand that for you guys so you can read it. Second, we're going to have a named server, which is server.labdomain.local. Now, wait a minute, Mike. What's the difference? Every domain has one start of authority DNS server, just one. But one domain can have tons of name servers. For example, something like google.com has gazillions of name servers all over the world, right? I mean, if we only had one poor DNS server handling every time somebody typed in, what's www.google.com? It'd be a mess, right? So every forward lookup zone is going to have one start of authority. By the way, folks, if you're taking Network Plus, these are Network Plus questions. Shoot, I think some of this is even on Bind. Yes, the Linux product is called Bind. Thank you, Scott. I was going nuts trying to remember that. So knowing what a start of authority or a name server, these are Network Plus questions. And there are questions on the Security Plus. They don't actually quiz you on this, but they'll say things like, John's name server is da-da-da-da-da. What's happening? Something else. Get the idea? So in this particular point, we're definitely directly hitting a little bit of A+, a lot of Network Plus, and background information that you need for Security Plus. Let's get back in there. All right. And here is just a regular record called a host record. So these are your regular records. So if you take a look right here, it's a host record. And it's basically just defining this system. So, and then quadruple A's, you see those? That's a host record, but for IPv6. All right? So let's have some fun. Let's go ahead. So server.labdomain.local is 10.0.2.15. So let's go ahead and just for funsies, let's create a host record for an imaginary device. Okay, let's just say I got a camera and I got the camera set up as 10.0.2.101. Okay, and I don't want to sit there every time I want to look at the camera. I don't want to go into my browser and type 10.0.2.101. I like to, in my browser, just type in camera. Get the idea? So let's go ahead and do that. So all I did was right click. I go into any white area, I right click, and I'm going to make a new host right here. And the name, it uses the parent name if blank. So I'm just going to call it camera1. Now it's really going to be camera1.labdomain.local, but we just have to, oh, this even shows it right there. And the IP address, because I set the camera up, is going to be 10.0.2. What did I say? 101? That's good enough. All right. Now it says create an associated PTR record. That's part of these reverse lookup zones. I always just say yes to that. Allow any authenticated user to update DNS records with the same owner name. I usually don't check that. You got to remember, what we're looking at is a DNS server that is invented by Microsoft that is Active Directory integrated. So there's a lot of pieces of this DNS server software that's not really standard to the rest of the world. For example, you can set up a Linux DNS server to talk to and work with a Windows DNS server, but there are certain aspects where things can get a little weird. So there's a lot of stuff when you're setting up a DNS server in Windows. It's like, do you want me to be able to talk to anybody? What they're trying to say is, do you have any Linux DNS servers that I need to talk to? If you do, you're going to check that box. But we don't, so I'm just going to say done. Oh, it's having a little, ignore that error. I'm jumping the gun a little bit. All right, so let's just hit done because we're done. There we go. Okay, so if you take a look, we now have a record for camera 1. So the next question you're going to be asking me is like, whoa, wait, Mike, what if my computer is a DHCP client, okay? And that IP address could be changing depending on what the DHCP server gives it, right? Right, it would. And this is one of the reasons I integrated the DHCP back in, because when you use a Windows DHCP server and a Windows DNS server, they will automatically talk to each other. And as soon as I set up my Windows client, and we're going to set the Windows client up as a DHCP client. The moment we set him up as a client, he will automatically get his 10.0.2. Whatever address, and he'll update the DNS server. How cool is that, huh? Yeah. So let's take a look at what we got, because basically, kids, we're done. There's a few other kind of cool things I want to show you, though. All right, so this thing is pretty much set up. I want you to take a look right here, though. Do you see we have trust points? A trust point is nothing more than other people that are allowed to look into this and make changes and things. But I'm looking for something else. Where'd it go? We're going to ignore that for the time being. Okay. What I want to do is, so we're going to go here on labdomain.local. And what I want you to do right now is right-click on that. And let's make sure have things changed on me. You can't quite see it, but there's a properties there. So I'm going to hit properties. So one of the things, we can make a lot of changes in here, like what the start of authority is, if we want name servers, zone transfers. If you, a zone transfer basically just says, it sends copies of all of these records to other DNS servers. In general, if you trust the DNS server, it's not public, you will go ahead and allow zone transfers. And I'm going to say only to servers listed in the name servers tab. All right, now the other one I want you to look at, this is kind of the cool one. Dang it. Guys, I keep clicking on the streaming software and not on the actual product, so sorry about that. So here I just clicked on the server itself. I'm going to select properties here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Let's do this again. I want to make sure you guys are going to this. This is very cool. You guys ready? So you just right-click on the server itself, and you go down to properties. There's this very interesting things I want to show you guys here. When you go into a browser and you type in www.peanutbutter.com or whatever it is, your web browser will talk to your DNS server And your web browser is going to go, what is the IP address for www.peanutbutter.com? DNS servers, probably, because he's your local DNS server, he isn't going to know that. So he's going to go up to the root servers. The root servers, and the root servers are just a dot. And he goes up to the great root servers in the sky and he says, root servers, this is your DNS server doing this, okay? Your DNS server goes, oh, great root servers, do you have the IP address for www.peanutbutter.com? And the root servers go, no, we don't. But we can get you to the .com servers. So then your DNS server goes to the .com servers and goes, oh, great .com servers, do you have the IP address for www.peanutbutter.com? And they say no, but we know where the DNS server, the start of authority for peanutbutter.com is. So you get that IP address. Again, your DNS server then goes to the authoritative DNS server and says, oh, great peanutbutter.com DNS server, do you have the address for www.peanutbutter.com? And he goes, here's the IP address. So you go through this process. So every DNS server has to have a DNS server. You got that? Every DNS server has to have a DNS server. You could set up, like for example, if you have a DNS server that's not even doing any DNS names, like for example, it's not an authoritative server, it's called a caching server. And it's done to speed things up a little bit. Most of the time when you're connecting to your ISP's DNS server, you're connecting to a caching server. It actually doesn't have any forward lookup zones. It's just designed to talk to this hierarchy really, really quick. But in this case, what we have is we've got a DNS server, and we need him to resolve. Certainly he can resolve anything that we put in our local network under labdomain.local, but this is also the same DNS server we need to go for www.peanutbutter.com. You get the idea? So what we've got to do is remember what your DNS server does. The first thing it does is it goes up to the root servers, correct? And says, oh, great root servers, and then that whole process starts. So inside every authoritative DNS server on Earth, there have to be what are called root hints. So I'm going to look up here. Do you see one that says root hints? Now, this thing already has all of the root servers for the internet built into that. The reason those are built in, folks, is because we set up a new forest. And Microsoft, and they configure this, they go, look, if you're going to set up a new DNS server in a new forest, he's going to be the top dog. So we've got to give him the root hints. If that was blank, there would be an option that says install root hints. Isn't that crazy? So these are actually, let's look at these one more time. So these are the actual, and these are not individual servers, by the way, folks. These are huge banks of servers. I'm trying to make this a little bigger so I can show it to you guys. But these are the actual IP addresses for all of the root servers in the world. Every single one of them, right there. It used to be 14. I haven't counted these lately. Now, the other thing you can do if you want to is you can do what are called forwarders. Do you see this option? A forwarder basically says, look, I don't want to deal with, the only thing I want this DNS server to do is to resolve all my local computers, camera one and all that stuff on labdomain.local. I don't want it to do anything else. In that case, what you do is you basically give your DNS server, you say, if it isn't for labdomain.local, forward it to the 8.8.8 or one of the big public ones or something like that. There's arguments for all these different ways to do it. Generally, what I like to do on most of my systems is I would not install root hints like we're doing here today. I wanted you to see it. In fact, I would probably take it out and I would just put a forwarder in here. So that means all the computers in my little network, they can just go to, if it's not labdomain.local, we'll just send them up to Google or whatever so they can find peanutbutter.com or whatever you're interested in. So usually if you're using root hints, you don't use forwarders. If you're using forwarders, you don't use root hints. All right, let me just make sure there's nothing critical. Those were the big things I wanted to show you in here. And I'm just scrolling through some of these settings. We have everything we need to make this work. Usually I'd probably set some logs up at this point, but everything looks good. Here's the interfaces that I know which ones it's going to be running through. Everything's good there. And folks, you've set up a DNS server. That's it. Isn't it amazing how easy it is? So that's all you got to do. Hang on. Who's talking to me? Who's talking to me? Okay, so the last thing we're going to do now, and we'll be done, is we're going to set up DHCP. Now I need to warn you guys, the DHCP that comes with Windows is very, very powerful. It is very robust. If you start using the DHCP server that comes with Windows, you're going to find yourself turning off that stupid piece of junk DHCP server that comes with your home routers. Because when you're talking about enterprise DHCP, there's a lot more to it, okay? So you guys ready to do this? I need you guys to install DHCP. I need you guys to type something in. No, I don't. How am I going to do this? Yeah, Mark Wheeler, you wrote down the password. Good man. Trust me, Mark, I'm not picking on you, dude. I have lost so many passwords over the years. It's just experience talking. Okay, so the last thing I want you guys to do is I've already installed DHCP, so I can't really do it again. But I'm going to walk you guys through the process of let's getting a DHCP server installed. So here's what you guys are going to need to do. So here you are on our local server, all right? So I need you to go over to Tools. No, we don't. I need you to go over to Manage. There we go. And I need you to go to Add Roles and Features, okay? And then, let me make sure I want you guys to be able to see this. So this is that usual goo. Skip this page by default. I never do. I don't know why. It's always role-based, what we're doing here. Select the server. We got just that one server there. And what I need you guys to do is check DHCP server, please. I need you to check DHCP server and then just go ahead and install it. I'm going to cancel because my DHCP server is already installed. So I'm going to take a minute and do questions while you guys install the DHCP server. You're not configuring the DHCP server. You're just installing the DHCP server software, okay? We'll configure it together. But at this point, let's just go ahead, and I need you guys to be installing that DHCP server, and I'll be watching if you guys have any problems. And first, I'm going to scroll up, see if there's any big questions. Kelvin Tran, oh cool, Microsoft DNS servers. It is pretty good. I honestly, when I teach DNS in a classroom setting, I'll use a Microsoft DNS server, mainly because it's graphical. Bind is a very powerful DNS server, but it's the most boring thing to set up because it's just configuration files. All right, Navneet Cars, something is freezing up on him. Hi Mike, my laptop says the AC power wattage and type cannot be determined. What do I do? Hi Mike, my laptop says the AC power wattage and type. So Navneet, I don't know, Navneet, where does it say this? Are you getting a Windows pop-up? Are you running some kind of weird utility? When you say my laptop says, I don't know what you mean by says. This is 3:26 p.m., Scott. So Kelvin's Kelvin at 3:33. Mainly because of Active Directory schema integration, Active Directory integrated zones, and Active Directory integration replication is awesome. Kelvin, it is, but all of those features that you're talking about aren't really pressed on any of the CompTIA exams, although they're important things. I'm not going to argue of the power of Active Directory and what it can do. God, man, I almost wish we could, I could do 6 or 8 hours on just Active Directory. Pretty fascinating stuff, as Kelvin says. Yeah, but Kelvin is another Microsoft nerd brother. I completely agree with you. Active Directory, you'll see big network setups. And guys, I'm stalling because the rest of y'all are installing DHCP while me and Kelvin are talking. You'll see big setups, like it's all Linux systems, and there'll be one domain controller because it's just so convenient to have single sign-on. So even though it's a Linux place, they'll go ahead and set Samba up on all the Linux boxes, and then you get single sign-on capability. Nobody else does single sign-on like Microsoft Server does, guys. More Samba. Yeah, Kelvin is saying Samba has its flaws. I agree, but for me, oh, hang on. Okay, hold on, Kelvin. Navneet just answered. Whenever I turn it on. Okay, Navneet, when you turn it on, are you talking during the BIOS, during the power on self-test, you're getting that error? Or does Windows completely boot into Windows and say it? So, Navneet, you need to, in your mind, understand when a computer boots up, you have that initial text-looking screens. That's part of what we call the power on self-test. As a technician, you should be comfortable with these terminologies. And if you're not, well, you're in the right place to learn them, aren't you? So I think I know what you're talking about. Now we're... Dude, you have a satellite Toshiba from 2003? Yeah, it's ancient. Those laptops, no laptop is designed to live more than about 4 or 5 years. If you can get any laptop to live longer than 4 or 5 years, you're getting a lot of life out of that laptop. There are so many parts of a laptop that are just designed to be abused and die. Almost every port in a laptop will fail in 4 to 5 years. Any spinny storage will probably fail in 4 to 5 years. Any type of LCD panel will probably fail in 4 to 5 years, not necessarily because the LCDs are bad, but because laptops have such a hard time dissipating heat. I can't support a machine from all the way back in 2003. The display is fuzzy and blurry, sure. LCDs are leaking out all over the place. They just wear out. And can pretty much guarantee you that's exactly what, especially if it's noticeable around the edge, around the edges. Navneet, I'm very worried that what's happening on your particular system is that, I'll bet it's a Dell, but you're getting this error at the initial boot. So what's probably telling me is that your recharge circuitry is messed up. Either that, or actually more probability, you've probably put a replacement AC adapter on there that's a piece of garbage from China. No offense to our friends from China, but there are certain places you don't go cheap in life. Number one, always buy good quality peanut butter. Number two, always buy name brand adapters. It's a reason to do that. I don't like to buy universal AC adapters, and I'm hoping that the latter is your problem. And unfortunately, the only real way to test that is to get a good quality adapter. So we'll see if any of those work. How about 10 years out of a laptop from Andre? Yeah, every day is a gift, Andre. You got that one right. All right, guys, I'm assuming that we've got DHCP installed and it's time to configure it. If you need more time, type into the chat right now, Mike, please wait, because I'd really like us to all set up DHCP together. You guys are about to get your minds blown. You're like, I had no idea. Kelvin Tran, you're not a Juniper fanboy, are you? I like Juniper. I like them all. I know you're talking to CC. I got to tell you, these days, I've turned into an Ubiquity guy. Their Unify series of routers and stuff are just amazing. Vimal Lad, I'm waiting. U4 Raymond, Unify is on point. It is, man. I got to tell you, for the price, you just get phenomenal firepower, tremendous configurability. You get a graphical configuration, but at the same time, they go to an iOS-like command structure if you want it. Okay, guys, I'm assuming we're all in there. Let's go ahead and get on the next point. You guys ready to configure DHCP? Because you don't know nothing about DHCP until you do it. And Windows, or it's not just has to be Windows. There's lots of good, robust DHCP servers out there. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Make sure you guys see what I'm seeing. All right. So if you've got DHCP installed, you'll see it right here. All right, and we need to get this configuration going. So just like we did before with DNS, all you got to do is click on that More, and then complete DHCP configuration. Yay! This little window pops up. It's just a hit next. Okay, so here we go. So first thing we got to do is we're going to specify the credentials. So we're just going to use the credentials for the administrator account that we've set up. Now you'll notice it says use alternate credentials. If you wanted somebody else to do your DHCP configuration, you could use another user here. Or you could skip it completely. The only reason, there is no reason to skip it. You're losing half the chocolatey goodness. All right, and I know you guys can't see the bottom of my screen, but I'm just hitting, it says commit. So it's gone ahead and got that set up. We'll talk about what some of that stuff means in a minute. All right, so we now have, why is that still up? Let me click this again. I think it's already good. So I'm just going to minimize all this. So usually what I do to get to my tools is I'm just going to, you guys can't see that, can you? So I'm just going to come in here and I go to Administrative Tools. You're going to go in here a lot. So we'll go to DHCP. Let me get this so you guys can see it. And welcome to the DHCP Configurator Management Tool Thingamabobber. I want to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see stuff. All right, here we go. So this is the DHCP server we want to configure. And we're just going to do IPv4, okay? Because DHCP and IPv6 is weird anyway. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to create a scope. A scope is a name of stuff we're going to be passing out. So I've got a scope called 10.0.2. I got it called Timmy. So the first thing, we just go down the list here. So let's set up a pool. So I'm passing out from 10.0.2.30 to 10.0.2.50. I just had, it's arbitrary, guys. You'll see people really start to freak out on, so how do you pick a beginning and an end IP address for your pool of addresses you're going to pass out? Well, I have certain rules that I, Mike Meyers, use, okay? So because I tend to work with smaller networks in general, and I'm almost always doing a WAC 24 of one type or another, I save .1 is always for the router, always. You don't have to be, but it's just, it makes life easier. If on network, if I hear blah, 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 .1, I know I'm hitting the router, that's good. .2, .3, .4, .5, .6, all those, I save those for things like wireless access points. I save them for switches if I need to have managed switches, those types of things. So I use the single digit numbers. Now that only gives me 9 numbers, but for most smaller networks, that's plenty, okay? So I keep those at lower numbers. I usually start with 10, 11, 12, whatever it might be. Those are going to be servers. domain controllers, file servers, video servers, cameras, whatever I have that's serving something. I will keep those addresses there. Now, folks, keep in mind, we're not even talking about DHCP at this point. All of the devices I've talked about, I statically configure them. All of them. The only thing that gets DHCP in my universe are things like phones from the wireless, individual computers. Sure, those can use DHCP. But if it's a box on my network, a switch or a router or anything, it gets a static IP address. If I have cameras or if I have file servers or video servers or whatever, those get static IP addresses. In my opinion, DHCP is only for individual client computers and wireless clients. That's me. Let's keep going. So now if you use the Mike Meyers thing, we've only used like from .1 up to about .99, right? So in a lot of networks, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and use the whole rest of my domain network ID for DHCP. So let's go ahead and change that on mine so it will reflect what we just talked about. So I'm just going to come in here. Oh, I got to do it here. There we go. So I just right-clicked on the scope called Timmy, and I'm going to change it from whatever I did before because that's silly. Whoa. And 254. So the next thing I want you to see is what's called the lease duration. The lease duration is how long do you get to keep this address once you ask for an address from the DHCP server. In Windows, by default, it's 8 hours. Oh, did I put a typo in there? Every time I see an error like that, the first thing I do is don't freak out. Probably just a little typo. .0.2.100. We'll do 200 just for funsies. Overlaps an existing range. I'm Mike Meyers, popular author. I'm not supposed to have silly errors like this. I'm not sure what the problem is, kids. Let's try it again. You know what we're going to do? As opposed to me trying to diagnose this quickly while we're all here, I'm just going to delete the whole scope and we're going to start over from the top. Let's do that. All right, so all I'm going to do real quick here is I'm just going to delete it. Boom, so we don't have a scope. All right. So here we go, guys. So action, new scope. I'm going to call it Timmy. And description. This is cool. Now, you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, Mike, are you telling me I can make more than one scope? Yeah, you can. You can do some really crazy stuff with it. When you get a chance, run ipconfig on your Windows machine and do a /?, and, oh God, what is the name of that command? Hold on. I'm I'm just running a quick ipconfig/?. Okay, so there is a command called ipconfig and then you type in /show class ID. A class ID and a scope is the same thing. You can set up your individual DHCP servers to answer one scope or another. Like for example, in a lot of places, you'll have 2 internet connections in offices. So you got the big main connection, you got this other connection that's not used very much, and they can set up 2 different scopes so that one will set up your default gateway as this box, and another one sets up the default gateway as that box. Just little things like that. So that's why scopes are important. DHCP server can handle more than one scope. Let's get back to that. All right, so, but most of the time DHCP server is only going to have one scope, so we're just going to say Timmy, and here it goes, starting IP address. See if we get it right this time. I think I know what the problem is. Here you go, for you people who know your CIDR, there's WAC 8. Watch, watch. There you go, there's a nice WAC 24 subnet. Got it? Cool, huh? All right. So now here's where the interesting stuff comes in. So add exclusions. So if you need to exclude something, here's where you do it. Like for example, remember I set up that camera on, I think it said 101? So I'm going to do 10.0.2.101. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying you can pass out anything from 100 to 200, but don't exclude, but exclude these 2. You go, well, Mike, why don't you just move the camera out of the scope address pool range? That's the right thing to do. That's why I use these mental organizations in my head. So the stuff that's set up statically is always separate from the things that are DHCP. It's just a habit. I feel that if you're setting up a DHCP scope and you're putting in exclusions, you're lazy. But that could be a good reason. For example, maybe you don't want to go back in the camera and reconfigure it to get it out of that DHCP scope range, right? That's where you have exclusions. Let's keep going. Next. So this is the lease duration, which by default is 8 days, which is fine. Do you want to configure options? You always configure options. You ready? Number 1, what's the default gateway? So I have the default gateway. Then DNS, what DNS server do you want me to use? Now notice by default it already has this machine on here, so we can just leave that alone. There's nothing that we need to do here. It already knows what the DNS server is. Then there's a whole bunch of ancient settings that don't really come into play anymore. And now it says activate the scope. Now that you've got it set up, Wonder Twin Powers, activate. And you now have a working DHCP server. Pretty fun, huh? Really, this is not going to be on any CompTIA exam, but do yourself a favor, do ipconfig/?, and take a look at set class ID, show class ID. That's how you get an individual DHCP client to jump on different scopes. Otherwise, it's going to use whatever the default is. Fun, huh? All right. All right, let's see how we're doing on questions because we're, once again, running out of time. But I'm just looking at questions, guys. Here's a question I missed from earlier from, oh, goodness, from like 312. DSL versus satellite, only choices available to me. Which would be better for a work environment? Probably DSL. Satellites affected by weather, you know, and that's just always an issue. I mean, it's not that big of a deal if you're satellite, you're just watching a movie, but it can be a real problem when you're trying to copy a critical document or something like that. DSL is a great way to do stuff. Most fiber optic, especially fiber optic to the home, is really just DSL over fiber optic. So the signaling is the same. DSL is fine. It's just old, slow. But it has some real benefits that people don't think about. For example, DSL, if you have a classic old school phone line DSL, when the power goes out, as long as you can keep your DSL modem working, you still got internet. Try to do that with fiber with other stuff. Okay. I have too many windows open. Now I'm confused. Okay, there we go. Wow, we only got 5 minutes left. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good. Elbow, this is 355. Mike, just curious, how many out of all your devices use Wi-Fi instead of cabled? If I can cable something, I will cable it, always. I remodeled my house about 7 or 8 years ago, and I pulled Cat 6A through the house. So I have outlets all over the place. So it's easy for me to plug in. So that's the most important thing. But second to that, I've got lots of wireless stuff in my house. Maybe not as much, I think. Phones. My home theater system is running 802.11ac. Runs great. That's about the heaviest lifting device I have that's wireless. The other wireless stuff is mainly IoT. All of my systems, including this one I'm working on right here, is physically wired. This is ugly because it's in the middle of a room, so I've got a cable just running through the kitchen kind of a thing. But no, most of my if I can wire it, I will. But again, I wired my house myself, okay? So it's easier for me to do that. I think for a lot of folks, that's very difficult. And to be honest with you, with 802, second wave, 802.11ac is pretty darn good wireless connectivity. I'm pretty impressed with it, so I'm happy. All right, so guys, what we're going to do is we are ready to start playing with our domain now. So what I want to do on Wednesday is we got to do a little more Active Directory stuff. Like you guys don't even know how to create a user and things like that. So I want to do a couple little base things like that. And then we'll have, okay, so your homework is I need you to set up a second, not a Windows server, just go to Microsoft, get the 180-day evaluation version of Windows 10. Just good old Windows 10 professional or whatever. It has to be professional. It cannot be Windows Home, otherwise it won't, Windows Home cannot join a domain. Because what we're going to do is you're going to set up a second virtual machine, you're going to put Windows 10 in there, and on Wednesday, we're going to take that second machine and you're going to join the domain that you've just created last Wednesday and today. And then once that's set up, then man, oh man, you have lots of fun toys to play with. Keep in mind, we're doing all this for PowerShell, although I'm discovering that I think this is helpful for a lot of you guys as well in terms of what all this means and how it gets configured. And it's my hope that you'll keep these machines running. Or, you know, I know not running 24/7, but don't delete them. And I think you'll be pretty happy as a learning tool. This is pretty standard in terms of how we set stuff up. So, and we'll get them all debugged and all that, because I know a lot of you guys are going to have little tiny problems here and there, and that's normal. It's okay to have, you know, zillions of little problems that you got to work through. But I'll tell you one thing. Were you impressed how easy it was to set up a basic Windows domain? It really wasn't that hard. It was graphical. You get good support from the tool sets. There's a reason that Microsoft is #1 in the Office environments, and it's because of stuff like that. even in our office, even all of our Macs have joined the domain, and they do it all really, really well. So I'm excited about that. So, okay, so I'm counting on you guys. Between now and Wednesday, you're going to get a Windows 10 system, not another server, guys, just regular Windows 10 Professional. Download a free evaluation copy from Microsoft. You're going to set it up. You're going to make sure that this Windows 10 is in that same NAT 10.0.2 or whatever you chose with yours network, because we want them to be able to obviously talk to each other. And just go ahead and install that, and then I'll show you. We're going to have that the Windows client. We're going to have him join the domain on Wednesday. We'll set up some domain accounts, and we'll pretty much be set up for something that's not only good for PowerShell, but it's going to be good for all kinds of stuff going forward. So I'm happy. All right, guys, let's see how we're looking. It's 4 o'clock. Man, how these days go by so quick with y'all? Anyway, so we all know what our job is. I will be seeing you guys on Wednesday, and you'll have that Windows 10 system for me. And I'm going to double check emails. I got a couple of people have been yelling at me that I missed some emails, and I will double check and make sure I don't miss anything. And we'll be doing that on Wednesday. All right, so until then, I'm out of here, folks. I will see you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock, where we will finish up with Active Directory and continue into PowerShell, and maybe I'll have some information on RAM topology we can talk about as well. So until then, this is your little Uncle Mikey and Jack the Disappearing Cat saying good night. Good night.